Recent One Piece chapters are quite interesting in terms of the storyline, but it's also fascinating to pay attention to Oda-sensei's wordplay in Japanese. For example, did anyone notice anything in this scene? Those who have studied Japanese will probably recognize the interesting aspect of this scene. The title of this article is likely The Straw Hat Crew's Barricade Incident. In Japanese, barricade is said like tatekomori. Let's focus on the part of the word, komori. If you change this hiragana to kanji, it can be expressed like this. Do you know what this represents? It's childcare or babysitting. So the hidden part of this article title, The Barricade Incident, is hinting at Makino's childcare. Now, let's look at what Vegapunk said during the actual egghead incident. Could I abandon such a young child? Vegapunk is also desperate to take care of the child. In this way, his wordplay often hides many hints about the story. Based on this, let's look at a frame from chapter 1094. Here, too, Mr. Oda's wordplay is prominently displayed. First, let's focus on the katakana word NIKA mentioned by Saturn. There are various theories about this, but for a Japanese native, the most natural interpretation is that combining the two katakanas representing NIKA forms the kanji go, which means the number 5. Luffy's birthday is also on May 5th. In the middle panel, Luffy is shown as an old man. The kanji representing old age is this. In the third panel, stars are flying out from Borsalino's head. The kanji representing star is this. The meanings of these 3 kanjis are 5, old age, and star. When you read them all together, it forms a word that represents 5 elders, gorusei. In this way, Mr. Oda skillfully uses Japanese to create wordplay. This wordplay often becomes a crucial hint to One Piece's secrets. So in this video, we'll explain One Piece chapters 1091 to 1095, including such subtle nuances that are hard to decipher if you're not a Japanese native and not enough with just online information. By the way, we've received a message from the owner of this channel, so let's listen to it.
皆さんこんにちは。私はルナピエナという名前で翻訳の仕事をしているものです。はい、このチャンネルのオーナーです。このチャンネルでは日本語ネイティブである私がワンピースの翻訳できない細かい表現など言葉遊びを含めて考察などをしています。しかし私にとって詳しくないものもたくさんあります。例えば黄金都市シャンドラのモデルになったであろうグアテマラのティカル遺跡など世界中の言語や遺跡の情報に詳しいわけではありません。このチャンネルの視聴者は賢く、いろいろな情報を持った人々がコメントを残してくれます。このように世界中の人々と情報を交換するチャンネルが作れたら嬉しいと思ってます。さて、11月2日に107巻、ワンピース107巻が発売されますが、単行本といえばSBS コーナーです。なのでこのチャンネルの視聴者の質問も小田先生に届けてみたいという企画をしたいと思います。はい、日本に住んでいる私が皆さんの代わりに小田先生に質問をはがきで送りたいと思います。この動画の最後に SBS 企画に関しての説明をしたいと思うので、この動画を最後まで見ていってください。ここまで聞いてくれてありがとうございました。またいつの日かお会いしましょう。あともし日本語の翻訳に関しての仕事の依頼がありましたらいつでも連絡待ってます。それでは。
At the end of this chapter, Luffy said, "Kizaru, we are 100 times stronger than we were 2 years ago." This reminds me of Shakuyaku's words when she said Rayleigh was 100 times stronger than Luffy and the others. Rayleigh, 2 years ago, fought on par with Borsalino. This probably implies that Luffy has become strong enough over the 2 years to fight on equal terms with Borsalino. In fact, both Luffy and Rayleigh managed to stop Borsalino with their legs. Moreover, Borsalino's response this time didn't have his usual composure. When Borsalino is composed, he typically elongates the vowel sounds at the ends of his sentences. These elongated sounds are called long vowels, extending the previous syllable's vowel for twice as long. However, when Luffy suddenly attacked, Borsalino didn't elongate his vowels, showing that he was caught off guard and serious. However, in Amazon Lily, Rayleigh mentioned that he wouldn't win if he fought Blackbeard head-on. It might be possible that Rayleigh has declined over 2 years, or it might simply imply that Blackbeard is still somewhat stronger than Luffy. It's uncertain whether Blackbeard's ship is still near Egghead at the moment. However, it seems unavoidable that the Straw Hat crew will have to battle the Blackbeard pirates sooner or later. This confrontation could possibly take place in Elbaf. In this video, I've discussed the possibility of Prince Loki of Elbaf holding the Road Poneglyph. When it comes to Elbaf, it's the island Usopp has always wanted to visit. This man is a liar. In fact, his name Uso means lie in Japanese. However, his lies have a peculiar way of becoming reality. Pirates really did attack the village. Dory and Brogy landed on the Nothing Island, which turned out to be a giant dung heap. There really was a land of dwarves. While artificial, there was a dragon. Sogeking, an alter ego of Usopp, did have a bounty of 30 million berries. One of Usopp's most famous lies is, "I have 8,000 followers." I think this lie might also become reality, possibly being realized in Elbaf. During the Marineford War, my personal favorite makeshift team made a surprise entrance. If the Straw Hat crew were to scatter and regroup in Elbaf, some members might be late to the war. Zoro might be the first to reach Elbaf, teasing Sanji as usual. When Luffy, Zoro, and the others find themselves in a pinch against the government or another enemy in Elbaf, a certain man might appear declaring, "I've brought 8,000 followers." Imagine the excitement if God Usopp arrives late, leading a grand fleet of 8,000 members. By the way, this number 8,000 is believed to be derived from the well-known Japanese phrase Uso Hapyaku, which means 800 lies. The title of Chapter 25 is also Uso Hapyaku. In Japanese, the number 800 often signifies an extremely large quantity, implying countless lies, making it apt for Usopp. There's also a term, Yao Yorozu no Kami, which literally translates to 8 million gods, indicating a vast variety of deities. Another significant element associated with the number 800 in One Piece is the Void Century. This refers to the history of the battle between the world government and a great kingdom that ended 800 years ago. Perhaps a significant lie was the reason for Joy Boy's defeat. In an interview, Oda-sensei mentioned he wanted the final chapter to be more playful. While the history of the Void Century is serious, it might also hide an outrageous lie that would make everyone laugh. Elbaf is the name of a country located in a land called Warland. The name of the land where the Great Kingdom once stood might just be Uso Land. In this chapter, what's really emphasized is Borsellino's internal conflict. This became especially apparent when he was asked by Luffy why he wants to kill Vegapunk. He distances himself for a moment during the lab phase. Alone, he mutters, "I don't really want to kill him, you know." In a place where no one could hear, he expressed his true feelings. By the way, Borsellino's line. This is derived from a famous line by the Japanese actor Kunie Tanaka, who is the model for his character. It's a line from the drama From the Northern Country, where he said,
子供がまだ食ってる途中でしょうが!
Interestingly, Borsellino is also from North Blue. In this chapter, Sakazuki also made an appearance. The Celestial Dragons were voicing their dissatisfaction towards Sakazuki and the guards, but Sakazuki ignored it. In the Japanese version, many Celestial Dragons have a peculiar way of speaking, and referring to themselves as Wachiki or Wachishi, which sounds somewhat foolish. Not just their speech, but their lifestyles and thoughts seem entirely degraded too. In contrast, the five elders, Figurland Garling and Don Quixote Homing, who appear wise, speak almost like ordinary humans. It seems like the higher-ranking celestial dragons might be intentionally allowing the others to live lives of comfort to limit their cognitive abilities. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Also, in this chapter, there's a celestial dragon who wanted lobster. There are two characters in One Piece who fancy lobster. Do you know who they are? They are Shanks and Doflamingo. This could mean that we might soon uncover more about Shanks' past. And I'm quite curious to know what has become of Doflamingo after his capture and imprisonment in Impel Down, considering he knows secrets about the crucial national treasure, making him a vital character in the story. Speaking of which, Bonnie has a technique called Toshitsuki, which translates to trace of death. She used this technique on Vegapunk. The use of the character for death in the name might imply that Bonnie had experienced death in the past. Toshi usually refers to age, and considering her abilities, the simple name might be Toshi Toshi no Mi. It's interesting to wonder whether this Bonnie's appearance is related to inheriting the giant tribe's blood through the buccaneer tribe's genes. I think the same could be said about Luffy. During the fight with Borsellino, Luffy grew gigantic again. Did anyone else notice how strange this phenomenon was? In my previous video, I explained the theory that the giants might have been on the brink of extinction due to the Ice Age. But there's a question that predates that. How were the giants born in the first place? Many of you might have thought, it's a fantasy world in One Piece, so it's not surprising to have giants. However, in a conversation with director Taniguchi, Oda-sensei made remarks suggesting that the giants seemed as if they didn't originally exist in the world of One Piece. If anyone wants a detailed look into the content of Oda-sensei's conversation, I've made it available for my Patreon members. Please check out this page. I also provide detailed explanations on the nuances of the original Japanese version of One Piece. Now, let me share a significant statement from Oda-sensei during that conversation. I've set a rule that, apart from the devil fruits, there's nothing mysterious in the world of One Piece. In other words, any phenomenon outside of the devil fruits is generally plausible and has a logical explanation. In the Uta world, the Demon King Totomujika has appeared. However, the concept of a Demon King also exists in One Piece. Totomujika seems to adhere to the rules of the devil fruit. Yet these rules might not be revealed even after One Piece concludes. This might be hard to believe for many. There are numerous phenomena in the world of One Piece that don't exist in our world. Luffy aside, Zoro's endurance is beyond human. But the fact remains that the author, Oda-sensei, has stated that all the peculiar phenomena in the world of One Piece originate from the devil fruits. This implies that the diverse races, the mysterious weather and magnetism of the Grand Line, and the existence of Sky Islands can all be explained by the devil fruits. In reality, questions like, how were the devil fruits born? And why is the price for their power being hated by the sea, which is Mother Nature? Haven't been clarified yet. The mysteries of the One Piece world will probably be revealed when the secrets of the devil fruits are unveiled. Oda-sensei's letter during his 2022 break also mentioned, I will depict all the mysteries of the One Piece world that I've been hiding so far. From this, we can speculate that the giants might have been born due to the devil fruit, or perhaps the environmental changes it brought about. With this knowledge in mind, I'd like to propose a hypothesis. The component called pyrobloin, contained in sea stone, might have caused humans to grow into giants. Firstly, the component pyrobloin doesn't exist in our world. There are other elements present in the world of One Piece that don't exist in ours, like neuroma photons. These are unknown particles in the One Piece universe, and anything exposed to this light, be it living beings, liquids, or even gases, loses its physical speed while retaining other energies. The Mero Mero no Mi probably contains a component unique to the One Piece world. I think that the technology using the component emitted from the Mero Mero fruit was responsible for turning Whitebeard's coat and Ace's hat to stone. So, we can infer that components not found in our world are supplied to the One Piece world through the devil fruits. This means that pyrobloin might also be a component extracted from a devil fruit. Let me explain why I believe the transformation into giants is related to pyrobloin. The biggest hint lies in chapter 1092, NIKA's transformation into a giant. Personally, I think NIKA can transform into a giant under certain conditions. Let's look at the scene in chapter 1045, where NIKA transformed. After Luffy escaped from inside Kaido, the air inside him was released, causing him to be propelled into the sky like a balloon. After entering the clouds, he transformed into a giant. The same pattern is observed when he delivers the finishing blow to Kaido. First, he's sent flying into the clouds by Kaido. Immediately after, a giant arm of Luffy emerges from the clouds. At that moment, Luffy himself is outside the cloud. Given that only one arm that was inside the cloud became gigantic, it's logical to think that the cloud is the cause of the enlargement. Unlike when he uses Gear Third, there's no depiction of him inflating his arm with air. He naturally grows upon entering and exiting the clouds. This same sequence is repeated in chapter 1092. Luffy is blasted from the Labo phase down to the lower floor by Borsalino. However, he reappears in the Labo phase in his giant form. Honestly, I was puzzled as to why Oda drew the scene of Luffy being knocked out of the Labo phase. But I believe this scene holds significant meaning. Do you remember what was directly beneath the Labo phase? Clouds. This suggests that Luffy, in his NIKA form, might be able to transform into a giant by entering clouds containing pyrobloin. I don't think this is a coincidence. Lilith mentioned something about the clouds of the Labo phase. By perfectly controlling the island's climate, we altered the density of pyrobloin and moisture, recreating the Sky Island's island clouds and sea clouds. This means the clouds supporting Vegapunk's research facility are the same as the Sky Island's clouds. Does anyone remember the characteristics of the Sky Island's clouds? The upper yard in Skypiea was originally part of Jaya. However, Compared to the forests of Jaya, the flora and fauna of the Sky Island grew abnormally large. When Zoro questioned this phenomenon, Robin responded, "It's probably due to the components that form the sea clouds and island clouds. The environment enveloping this Sky Island seems to have the power to accelerate the growth of plants and animals at an abnormal rate. This component is likely pyrobloin." So, the pyrobloin in the sea clouds and island clouds might have stimulated NIKA's rapid growth into a giant. In fact, the south birds that lived in Jaya's forests were normal-sized, but their descendants, who were sent to the Sky Island with the land 400 years ago, had grown into giants. So, how can we explain NIKA's transformation into a giant in Wano? I think Pagaya's statement, Caunus's father, provides the answer. He said, "The component found in sea stone is what we call pyrobloin. It's a keratin particle that, when carried into the sky by a volcano and gains moisture, forms sea clouds and island clouds due to the difference in density." Wano Kuni has a large active volcano. Yes, Fujiyama. Furthermore, Hawkins mentioned, the sea stone spread throughout the world originated in Wano. This suggests that pyrobloin is carried into the sky by the towering Fujiyama in Wano Kuni. Using this pyrobloin, the people of Wano likely produced sea stone. So, I think the reason Luffy transformed into a giant is that he plunged into the clouds above Wano, which likely contain pyrobloin. Luffy's combat methods are versatile, from creating sunglasses to spinning his legs like wheels to run in the air. While there are still many mysteries surrounding NIKA, it's possible that when NIKA's abilities are activated, he can utilize the nature of pyrobloin to accelerate the growth of plants and animals, allowing for temporary gigantification. By the way, in Chapter 1070, Luffy also transformed into a giant during his fight with Lucci. Just like in other scenes before his transformation, Luffy flew somewhere. Then, in his giant form, he suddenly appeared before Lucci. There wasn't a clear depiction of him diving into the clouds, but he might have been near the bottle that generates these clouds. Interestingly, we readers have yet to see the exact moment just before NIKA's transformation in giant. It's safe to assume that Oda is intentionally hiding this. However, some might wonder, if the clouds contain pyrobloin from sea stone, wouldn't they negate Luffy's abilities? But since pyrobloin is just one component of sea stone, it doesn't necessarily relate to the sea. As mentioned earlier, both sea clouds and island clouds are formed using pyrobloin. When Luffy submerged in the sea clouds, he drowned as usual. But what about on the island clouds? While merely touching sea stone drains a devil fruit user's power, Luffy, a devil fruit user, could move normally on the island clouds despite their pyrobloin content. This suggests that pyrobloin itself doesn't possess the energy of the sea and doesn't drain a devil fruit user's power. Thus, both sea clouds and sea stone might be formed by processing pyrobloin with another component that emits the energy of the sea. Perhaps pyrobloin not only stimulates the growth of plants and animals, but also plays a role in activating the energy of the sea. By the way, there's an island near Wano called Warland, where the giant tribe lives. As I proposed at the beginning of this video, I believe that the giants might have been born due to the growth-accelerating properties of pyrobloin. The case of Fleavance can provide a significant clue. Over generations, the lifespan of the people of Fleavance gradually decreased. This was because lead accumulated in their bodies. This lead effect was passed on to their children, further shortening their lifespans. Similarly, over generations, people whose bodies continuously accumulated pyrobloin might have gradually grown larger, with lifespans 3 times longer than regular humans. This doesn't just apply to humans. There are giant creatures living around Warland. The kid pirates were also surprised by the size of the fish around Elbaf. Additionally, we know that there are giant trees on the island. Perhaps there's a volcano on Warland, even larger than Fuji Mountain, causing the surrounding flora and fauna to grow so large. Dory and Brogy used the eruption of a volcano as a signal for their duels. This dueling culture might have originated from the presence of a volcano on Elbaf. Let's take a look at the sky above Warland. You can see something that looks like smoke or a shadow. This might be the smoke emitted from a volcano. The ancestors of the giant tribe might have gradually ingested the pyrobloin obtained from here. By the way, there's a pirate from the worst generation that the Straw Hat crew hasn't encountered yet, Eroge. He was in a ruin called Barren Terminal in Sky Island. We don't know when he'll appear, but perhaps they'll meet him in Elbaf. This might also introduce the High West Peak, another way to reach Sky Islands besides the knock-up stream. Through this massive tree, one might be able to reach there. This would also explain the abundant supply of pyrobloin in Warland. Regarding Uroge's abilities, they haven't been fully revealed, but it seems he can absorb damage and grow larger. I believe that his true identity is a reject dial that ate the human fruit, model masochist. This allows him to joyfully absorb shocks and convert the accumulated power into energy for gigantification. Sorry, I'm just kidding again. Either way, Uroge's ability is to grow larger. His original height is 388 centimeter, but after absorbing damage, he grew to 689 centimeter, similar to a pacifista. San Juan Wolf's ability is also gigantification. Just as Foxy's ability was due to the Noroma photon particle, their abilities might be due to the pyrobloin component enabling gigantification. I've been explaining how pyrobloin might promote gigantification, but there's a big issue. If pyrobloin is being emitted from Fuji Mountain, why aren't the people of Wano turning into giants? And while the Upper Yard and South Birds in Skypiea grew larger, the people of Skypiea didn't. However, compared to other countries, Wano has an unusually high number of tall individuals. Oden was 382 centimeter tall. The shortest of the red scabbards, Kawamatsu, is still 271 centimeter. As children, Izo and Okiku were about the same height, but Okiku, who stayed in Wano, grew to 287 centimeter, while Izo, who left Wano early on, is 192 centimeter. This suggests they might have unknowingly ingested pyrobloin in Wano, leading to abnormal growth rates. Orochi is also 305 centimeter. Considering not everyone in Wano or Skypiea turned into giants, there might be specific conditions for gigantification, like directly ingesting something containing pyrobloin. So far, I've introduced the hypothesis that the pyrobloin found in Skypiea's clouds and sea stone is responsible for gigantification. Personally, I believe that these clouds will become a crucial theme in One Piece moving forward. In the awakened form of Zoan-type devil fruits, a Hagoromo appears. The Hagoromo is a celestial robe often mentioned in Japanese myths and folktales. It's worn by heavenly maidens, allowing them to fly freely through the sky. However, in One Piece, this robe is depicted as something akin to clouds. Both Kaido and Momonosuke, in their dragon forms, can produce flame clouds. There might be a connection between awakening and clouds. Moreover, clouds have been weaponized. The attack that obliterated the Lulusia kingdom was launched from within a cloud. While the true nature of this shadowy force remains unknown, it's likely related to the ancient weapons, as Ivankov speculated. Additionally, Enel had a device installed in the Maxim, which he forced Gonfal's subordinates to build, that could produce clouds. This led to the complete disappearance of Angel Island. Both attacks, utilizing clouds, generated enough power to destroy entire islands. This suggests that clouds might be essential as an energy source for NIKA's gigantification. Perhaps we might even see a scene where Nami generates clouds to facilitate Luffy's gigantification. Nami learned her weather techniques from a certain individual who created an artificial sky island. Hardas. Do you remember where Haradas came from? It's Sky Island Burka, which was destroyed by Enel. This suggests that the technology to create Sky Island might have been preserved in Burka. Enel probably acquired the knowledge and technology to build the Maxim from Burka. Just as Haradas created the Weatheria clouds, the Maxim also produces clouds. And speaking of Burka, it's a name that also exists in the Moon City. There's no doubt that this cloud-based technology is related to lunar technology. This might imply that even the sky islands in the world of One Piece were artificially created, either by the people of the moon or by the Great Kingdom. In Chapter 1093, the battle between Luffy and Borsalino is still ongoing. Luffy refers to the hologram as Horo Horo. Interestingly, this is the same name as Perona's devil fruit. According to the One Piece magazine's Devil Fruit Encyclopedia, the essence of the Horo Horo no Mi isn't merely about making the enemy negative. Its original effect is to create and control spirits with various abilities, meaning the powers of these spirits can be changed at will by the user. This information was revealed in Volume 17 of the magazine, released in September 2023, featuring the Horo Horo no Mi and Goro Goro no Mi. As I mentioned earlier, in the Egghead arc, Luffy repeatedly used the word Horo Horo. Additionally, in the chapter 1080, Perona appeared in Hachinos. Her whereabouts, along with Moria's, are unknown, but Perona's abilities might play a significant role in the upcoming storyline. Also, in the Egghead arc, the concepts of island clouds and pyrobloin were explained again by Lilith. The attacks using the Mother Flame somewhat remind us of Enel's abilities, possibly hinting that Oda-sensei wants us to pay attention once more to the Skypiea arc. Furthermore, in this chapter, for some reason, Vegapunk perceives Bonnie as a child, emphasized twice. In the original version of One Piece, it's evident that Bonnie's speech style subtly changes at times. Usually, Bonnie's speech resembles that of a rough young woman. However, in certain situations, her way of speaking suddenly shifts. This was particularly noticeable in Chapter 1063. Until a specific moment, she spoke like a typical, somewhat crude young woman. But, upon encountering the pacifista, her tone changed to that of a little girl. The same occurred in Chapter 1074. Bonnie, in Room Nikyu, peeked into Kuma's memories a bit. Realizing the abused one was Kuma, her tone again shifted to that of a little girl. In front of Kuma, Bonnie always speaks like a small child and starts crying easily. indicating a tragic past between Kuma and Bonnie. I offer a detailed explanation of the Japanese used in each chapter of One Piece to Patreon members. If you're interested, feel free to visit this page. Members can ask translation questions related to One Piece anytime. Membership slots are limited, so if you're interested, become a member as soon as possible. I also prioritize translation requests from our Patreon members. First, let's take a look at the cover where the Shimotsuki family is all assembled. The animation of Oda-sensei's one-shot work, Monsters, published in Jump in 1994, has finally been realized. Along with it, these words are attached. This name corresponds to the technique Zoro used to defeat King. What caught my eye is this part. The kanji here means samurai, but it reads together as jigoku. The word might sound familiar, and it signifies hell. Using the kanji for samurai and extreme to express hell feels quite stylish from a native perspective, particularly when you know about kanji. I often receive requests to help choose cool kanji for tattoos from a native perspective. If interested, message me on Instagram. Now, back to the story. In Chapter 1094, there are still many depictions suggesting hell. The Marine who experienced Bonnie's technique, NDE, near-death experience, said, "I saw the Sanzu River." In Buddhist worldview, it's believed that after death, people cross the Sanzu River on the 7th day. The Sanzu River is the boundary between this world and the next. In the afterlife, judgments determining the destination of the deceased's soul are made every 7 days up to the 49th day, judged by 10 kings called Duo. Here it reminds us of Zoro in Wano country, who made a remark about becoming the king of hell. Enma, as you may know, signifies the king of hell. By the way, the word Buddhism is written like this in kanji. If you break down the kanji meaning Buddha, it becomes the katakana for Imu. And when Sabo saw Imu in the room of the throne in Maria Joie, he said, "I never thought there would be hell at the top of the world." There are many elements of Buddhism incorporated into the One Piece story, emphasizing the word hell repeatedly. Also, Luffy said this during the fight with Kaido, "I've been to hell many times." One of the hells Luffy visited is probably Impel Down. These places that were referred to as hell seem somewhat familiar. Right after their battle ended, Saturn finally appeared from the magic circle. In Japanese, this pentagram is called Gobose, replacing the middle kanji character, which means old man, with another results in the word Gorose. This figure seems to be modeled after the Japanese yokai, Ushioni, which even samurai feared, and which, according to legend, was exorcised by the chief priest of the Kanonji temple through his spiritual power and prayers. Perhaps Urouge might repel Saturn in the same way. But that might not be necessary. Saturn was already bleeding, having been stabbed by Bonnie in the last scene of Chapter 1094. While it wasn't as shocking as when Luffy punched Charlos, the top celestial dragon being stabbed is already a major incident surpassing that. However, it's hard to imagine Saturn, who sends shivers down the spines of strong individuals like Luffy with his haki, falling here. Currently, Luffy is aged and cannot fight, so probably Sanji and Frankie will engage in battle. However, since Sanji has to protect Bonnie and Frankie has to protect Vegapunk while fighting, they are expected to be at a disadvantage. There are several candidates who might come to rescue them from this predicament. I think there's a good chance for the giant robot and the Straw Hat Grand Fleet, but they are more likely to appear to assist with the escape rather than to fight Saturn. Personally, I think the one to protect Bonnie and Vegapunk from Saturn will be Kuma. But Oda-sensei has clearly shown us that Egghead is heading towards a shocking conclusion. Just Kuma saving Bonnie probably wouldn't be big enough to make global news. So I think there's another twist in the story that will shock the readers. I previously speculated in another video that Kuma's memories might spread worldwide. However, I haven't explained the event that caused this. What kind of incident do you think will befall Egghead? In short, I'm talking about a massive explosion in Egghead. So, who might be the one to cause this massive explosion in Egghead? Saturn? No. York? No. Emu? No. Then is it this incompetent one? No. There's someone in Egghead whose actions are still unknown. He hasn't shown himself since chapter 1065. Personally, I think Caribou will play a significant role in this Egghead incident. Let me show you the biggest clue. I think Caribou's short serialized adventure is a crucial foreshadowing that ties into the later story. The reasons why Caribou accompanied them to Egghead and his future contributions will be explained in detail in the latter part of this video. Oh, by the way, I visited Kodansha this week to pitch a certain manga. I handle the translation of the manga, and occasionally I undertake projects where I present it to editors. There's a common piece of advice that editors give to those who've pitched manga before. What message do you want to convey to your readers through your manga? If you have experience writing manga, consider this advice. I'll write more details about this in an article for members of Dusk. I also work on translating manga, websites, books, etc. If you're interested, please get in touch. In the world of One Piece, there are commonalities in places where large-scale explosions occur. First, there's Baltimore, the hometown of Vegapunk, where Frankie was sent by Kuma. A massive explosion occurred there due to a switch Frankie pressed. Then there's Punk Hazard. Although the explosion was averted due to Monet's death in that arc, a significant explosion had occurred there in the past. Caesar, out of spite after being expelled from Vegapunk's science team, detonated Punk Hazard. Considering that scientific research facilities in the One Piece world tend to explode, it's highly likely that Egghead, the research facility for the SSG, will also end with a massive explosion. In fact, there are many similarities between this arc and the Egghead arc. Let's look at some examples. Both are government research institutions. Punk Hazard was originally a world government facility, and it's where experiments were conducted on Albel and Kaido. Egghead, of course, is also a government research institution. Both are near naval bases. Punk Hazard was near the G5 naval base, and Egghead is near the G14 naval base. A member of the Worst Generation accompanied the Straw Hat crew in both arcs. Luffy reunited with Law in Punk Hazard, while in Egghead, Luffy met Bonnie. Both arcs featured giant children. Mocha and Atlas have somewhat similar vibes, and artificial dragons also made an appearance. Vegapunk and Kinemon. Luffy met the lower half of Kinemon in Punk Hazard. In contrast, in Egghead, Luffy encountered Vegapunk, half submerged in a robot. Luffy's first words to Vegapunk were, "You look like Kinemon." Kidnapping of scientists. In the Punk Hazard arc, the Straw Hat crew and Law kidnapped Caesar, who was producing SAD, to negotiate with Doflamingo. In Egghead, Luffy is attempting to escape Egghead by taking York hostage. By the way, according to Morgan's article, the public probably believes that the Straw Hat crew is holding Vegapunk hostage in Egghead. The next destination after Punk Hazard was Greenbit, an island inhabited by dwarves. In contrast, after Egghead, the next target is Elbaf, an island inhabited by giants. Lastly, there's the intervention of the Blackbeard pirates. Kuzan appeared towards the end of the Punk Hazard arc, and there's a vibe that the Blackbeard pirates might intervene after the Egghead incident. Do you remember how the Punk Hazard arc was supposed to conclude? It was with an explosion that would obliterate the entire island. However, the heart Caesar stabbed, thinking it was Smoker's, turned out to be Monet's. This led to Monet's death and the explosion being averted. This suggests that a massive explosion that engulfs the entire island might indeed occur in Egghead. There's more to my reasoning than just what I've mentioned so far. In fact, this is where the main point begins. Currently, in the world of One Piece, earthquakes are occurring worldwide due to the massive hole created by the disappearance of Lelouch. As a result, tsunamis have arisen, and the global water level has risen by 1 meter. I've theorized about the logic behind this global water level rise in this video, so if you're interested, please check it out. Earthquakes and tsunamis are common disasters in Japan, with the most memorable being the 2011 Tohoku earthquake and tsunami. Even though the town I lived in was quite far from the epicenter, I felt the tremors for a long time. However, another significant event occurred during this time. The explosion of the Fukushima nuclear reactor. I was a student at the time, and the news in Japan was dominated by this event every day. I personally speculate that Oda-sensei intended to depict an explosion at the end of the Punk Hazard arc. However, the Punk Hazard arc began in 2012, a sensitive period for the public regarding words like earthquake, tsunami, and nuclear power. I think Oda-sensei or Shueisha decided to avoid depicting a scientific facility explosion in the Punk Hazard arc, considering the public sentiment. Now, more than 10 years after the disaster, the world of One Piece is also being hit by tsunamis and earthquakes. I think there's a high possibility of a shocking explosion, similar to the nuclear reactor explosion in Japan. Especially emphasized recently is the power plant that produces the mother flame. In Japanese, this is written as Yuguro. This model is probably based on Kaku Yuguro, which likely represents a nuclear fusion reactor. I believe there's a possibility that this power plant might explode. However, those familiar with this field might think the explosion during the Tohoku earthquake was in a nuclear reactor, not a fusion reactor. In theory, a fusion reactor cannot explode. For clarity, I'll explain the difference between nuclear power generation and nuclear fusion power generation. If you're not interested, please skip ahead in the video to this timestamp. In summary, while a nuclear fusion reactor theoretically doesn't explode, the one in the world of One Piece might have the potential to do so. Nuclear power generation uses nuclear fission. It utilizes the energy released when uranium undergoes fission by being struck by neutrons. When fission occurs inside a reactor, neutrons are released, triggering a chain reaction where these neutrons cause other atomic nuclei to split. If this chain reaction becomes uncontrollable, the reactor core's temperature can rise significantly, leading to overheating or even meltdown. In such situations, hydrogen can be produced due to the oxidation of fuel cladding tubes. If this hydrogen accumulates and reaches a certain concentration, it poses an explosion risk when mixed with oxygen in the air. This phenomenon occurred at the Fukushima nuclear plant. In contrast, nuclear fusion refers to the reaction where atomic nuclei combine to form a new atom. Specifically, two atoms, deuterium and tritium, combine to produce a new atom called an alpha particle and a neutron. This alpha particle plays a special role. It warms the plasma where nuclear fusion occurs, maintaining its temperature. Once the helium has served its purpose, it's vented out. The neutron, on the other hand, carries energy, which can be used as heat to generate electricity. The key point is that nuclear fusion doesn't proceed all at once, so there's no risk of an explosion. Yet, despite its scientific implausibility, in the world of Gundam, fusion reactors exploded. In the Gundam universe, special robots called mobile suits are powered by a device called a fusion reactor. This reactor operates by combining deuterium and helium-3, producing a vast amount of energy, known as D3 He fusion. However, if a mobile suit takes damage during combat, the deuterium inside its fusion reactor can suddenly react, causing a massive explosion. This means the explosion's cause is the sudden large reaction of the deuterium used as an energy source. Therefore, I believe there's a good chance that the fusion reactor in Egghead could also be a cause for an explosion. The power plant is written in kanji as yuguro, but this word doesn't exist in Japanese. The correct term is kaku yuguro. However, many are sensitive to this word kaku, which means core or nucleus. So they might have used only the word yuguro, without kaku. The fact that kaku got injured might be foreshadowing for the nuclear reactor taking damage in the upcoming story. Speaking of nuclear, many might recall Hiroshima when they hear nuclear bomb. Sakazuki's dialect is Hiroshima-ben, and so is Hibari's. The old Marine headquarters is likely modeled after Hiroshima Castle. By the way, the name Garp might be inspired by a baseball team based in Hiroshima, the Hiroshima Carp. It's the baseball team where players like Kenta Maeda and Hiroki Kuroda played. If there's anyone knowledgeable about baseball, please leave a comment. It seems that characters and facilities related to the Marines might be inspired by things associated with Hiroshima. Since Egghead is also a facility of the Marine science team, it makes sense that an explosion could occur there. Another significant event related to nuclear bombs is the Cuban Missile Crisis, a situation that brought the world to the brink of nuclear war. When thinking about the key figures of the Cuban Revolution, Che Guevara undoubtedly comes to mind. In the world of One Piece, there's a character who might have been modeled after him, Captain Gaburu of the Revolutionary Army. He's a revolutionary who has already passed away in the One Piece universe and appeared in the short series Caribous in the New World. Given that cover stories have been increasingly related to the main One Piece narrative, Gaburu might play a significant role. This might suggest that Caribou, who bears a striking resemblance to Gaburu, might be the one to trigger the massive explosion of the fusion reactor in Egghead. So, where is Caribou now? We know he was in Labo phase up to chapter 1065, but there's been no news since. Caribou has repeatedly shown interest in weapons and armaments. Even in his cover story series, he was keenly interested when sneaking into a weapons factory. Currently, Caribou possesses information on two ancient weapons, Poseidon and Pluton. If Caribou learns that the power plant can produce a mother flame capable of destroying an entire island, he would undoubtedly try to seize it. His ability even allows him to swallow entire weapon factories. I believe this Caribou's actions might lead to the explosion of the fusion reactor. The place that York warned the Seraphim not to damage is likely the power plant fusion reactor. York probably feared that any external stimulus, like a laser attack on the power plant, could trigger an island-wide explosion. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, the situation thankfully didn't escalate to nuclear war. Similarly, there was no massive explosion in the Punk Hazard arc. However, in Egghead, Caribou might accidentally trigger the fusion reactor while trying to steal it, leading to a catastrophic explosion that engulfs the entire island. In reality, the explosion caused by the Tamatabako was an unconscious accident by Dufeld after being knocked out by Stussy. Yet, the media reported that Straw Hat Luffy strategically destroyed Big Mom's castle. Similarly, even if the power plant explodes due to Caribou's carelessness, it's easy to imagine Morgan's writing an article blaming the Straw Hat crew for the disaster. This could further solidify the crew's reputation as a significant threat in the eyes of the world. In this chapter, we see a flashback of Kuma's past. His homeland is named the Sorbet Kingdom. The word sorbet might be suggesting a connection to the sun god due to its resemblance to the word for sun. I think there's another play on words hidden here by Oda-sensei with the word sorbet, which also means sherbet ice cream. And the design of the buildings somewhat reminds us of ice candies. And speaking of famous sherbet ice candies in Japan, Gari-Gari-kun comes to mind. Now, the current packaging of Gari-Gari-kun is pretty simple, but back when Oda-sensei was a kid, it was a bit different. Take a look. Yes, many of you probably noticed that it somewhat resembles Kuma's appearance as a child, and the pose is very similar to NIKA's. By the way, gari-gari is a Japanese onomatopoeia representing the sound of scraping ice while eating and can also describe a very skinny person. There was a time when the company producing Gari-Gari-kun faced a crisis due to a sudden drop in sales when consumer spending fell during the 1979 oil shock. Speaking of the oil shock, it probably reminds many of you of Bonnie's technique. Oiru in katakana directly means oil, but in hiragana or kanji, oiru becomes a verb meaning to age. The Gari-Gari-kun ice candy is commonly known to be aqua-colored, inspired by the sky and sea, because the developers back then wanted kids to eat this ice candy outdoors. Clap said to Kuma, "NIKA will bring you out to the free seas under the sun." This concept aligns well with Gari-Gari-kun's. Moreover, on the wooden stick of the Gari-Gari-kun ice candy, there is sometimes a mark that says win, and if you get it, you get another Gari-Gari-kun for free. This was also once featured in One Piece. Can anyone remember? It was Bartolomeo. You might already know, but Bartolomeo and Kuma have something in common. Kuma's surname, Bartholomew, translates to Bartolomeo in Italian. Both have ties to Luffy. Kuma was devoted to the sun god NIKA, while Bartolomeo idolizes Luffy like a god. I had predicted that maybe Egghead, possibly Bartolomeo and Kuma, might appear in the end, and they might actually turn up in Egghead to rescue Luffy and the crew in a critical moment. Now, looking at the slaves of God Valley, there seems to be some target-like symbol on their backs. It might be the same symbol seen on Kuma's back in chapter 1074. Oda-sensei might be connecting this to Kuma's famous phrase about, "He's right on target." Lastly, let's look at the scene where Ivankov appears. He usually refers to himself as Watashi. Atashi is a pronoun generally used by females, but in chapter 1095, his reference changed to fuore, where ore is a masculine pronoun. So it seems to suggest that Ivankov awakened to his Okama identity after eating the Horu Horu no Mi following the God Valley incident. There are still many mysteries yet to be uncovered about this incident. What are you most curious about? It's probably Shank's birth. This is part of a conversation among the 5 elders in the movie. Did Red Hair have a daughter? According to the Cypher Poll report, a completely new enemy has emerged, entirely negating the Great Pirate Era. It's problematic. The masses are also following her. We must nip the bud of revolution early, or it'll be too late. Even if she is of the Figureland family lineage? The 5 elders saw Uta as a dangerous individual and attempted to eliminate her. However, at this time, the 5 elders mistakenly believed Uta to be Shank's real daughter, recognizing her as part of the Figureland family, just like Shank's. Therefore, Nasjuro questioned the other 5 elders whether it was genuinely okay to eliminate Uta. According to the information in Film Red and the 4 billion volumes, the Roger pirates didn't find Shanks because someone asked them to take care of him. They accidentally found him in a treasure chest they had stolen. This means there's a high possibility that Roger and his crew didn't know his name as a member of the Figureland family. In fact, lower-ranking Marines aside, those who likely know the truth about God Valley, like Garp, Sengoku, and the 5 Elders, have never called him by his name, Shanks. They only refer to him as Red Hair. One reason Garp might dislike Shanks could be because he is part of the Celestial Dragon's lineage. What do you think his real name is? In Japan, the meme Circle K Shanks became popular. There used to be a convenience store called Circle K Sunkus. If you've been to Japan, you might know it. Since it was always decided that Shanks was from the West Blue, it seems like the Western movie genre might also be involved. I think the Roger pirates hold the key to unraveling the mystery of the God Valley incident. The biggest question about the God Valley incident is, why did the Roger pirates, who seem unrelated to the Rocks pirates and the Celestial Dragons at first glance, appear in God Valley? Let's first consider this. Sengoku briefly mentioned the God Valley incident like this: an incident where Garp and Roger, who happened to be there, teamed up and defeated the Rocks pirates. Let's check the meaning of the verb iawaseru. It means to just be there, to happen to be in the same place coincidentally. From this, the likelihood that Garp and Sengoku called the Roger as reinforcements, or that the Rocks pirates proposed a deal to the Roger pirates, is very low. Rather, it suggests that the Roger pirates came to God Valley with a different objective. The conversation of the Roger pirates leaving God Valley in the distributed 4 billion volumes at the Film Red screening also supports this basis. A crew member made this remark: "We stole the treasure too." And when they checked inside the treasure chest, they found Shanks. The phrase, "the treasure too," suggests that the treasure itself was a byproduct, and there was another main harvest. I think what the Roger pirates obtained was either information about the weapon that destroyed God Valley or a copy of the poneglyph. The biggest hint is in chapter 966. The Roger pirates reached Lodestar Island once, 39 years ago. However, Roger realized that it wasn't the last island and said that reaching the last island required deciphering the red stones. But where did he learn that these red stones were necessary to reach the last island? At the time, 39 years ago, there was no interaction with Odin or the Mink tribe yet, and since no one had reached Laugh Tale, there were almost no sources of information. One possibility is someone who traveled the world in search of historical documents. Yes, that would be Professor Clover. Considering that Rayleigh knew Professor Clover, it's conceivable that they headed to O'Hara once to unravel the mystery of the route to the last island. The God Valley incident broke out the next year after they reached Lodestar Island. O'Hara was in the West Blue, and so was God Valley. The Roger pirates, who were in O'Hara, knew that there was a poneglyph in God Valley necessary to reach Laugh Tale, and headed there. It was fortunate that the God Valley incident erupted at that timing. This might be what is meant by saying that D is always led by a strange fate. As mentioned at the beginning of this video, it's almost certain to say that Shanks originates from the Figureland family. In chapter 1095, it was revealed that God Valley was simply a non-government affiliated land that was coincidentally chosen as the site for the Celestial Dragon's indigenous people hunt, which occurs every 3 years. Considering Shanks was about 1 year old at the time of the God Valley incident, it would naturally be assumed that his hometown should be Mariajois. However, he referred to the liquor from the West Blue as his hometown liquor, expressing it as liquor made from the water of his hometown. By the way, in the English version, it says, "Nothing is superior to the booze made with the water from my place," but the original version has a slightly different nuance. "There is nothing that surpasses the liquor made from the water that has soaked into my skin." This Japanese expression signifies that by staying in a certain place for a certain period, the water of that area becomes familiar to one's body. Sensibly speaking, in Japanese, it's reasonable to think that Shanks has a past where he stayed in the West Blue for at least over a year. It doesn't make sense to feel that the water of the West Blue has permeated Shanks's skin if Roger and his crew were traveling around the world after the God Valley incident. This means that the Roger pirates could have been deciphering the mysteries of history and the poneglyphs while based in Ohara in the West Blue. The Reson Clover could get out even after being arrested, or imprisoned might be due to the assistance of the Roger pirates. I personally think that the poneglyph that likely existed in God Valley could have been a road poneglyph. This is because there has been a long-standing question about where Big Mom got hers from. As of 26 years ago, Roger had stolen the road poneglyph from Linlin, which means she must have heard about its importance from someone. Yes, probably from Rox D. Jebeck. There might have been a physical relationship between Jebeck and Linlin, similar to Doflamingo and Viola. Using this intimate relationship, she might have extracted information about the relationship between the road poneglyph and Laugh-Tale from Jebeck. Otherwise, it would be hard to imagine Linlin knowing the importance of the poneglyph when no one had reached Laugh-Tale at that time. Jebeck, wanting to become the king of the world, probably knew a lot about the world's history. By the way, the God Valley incident happened 38 years ago, and among Big Mom's children, Charlotte Montdor is currently 38 years old. This means there might be children older than him who are the offspring of Rox. Do you have any characters in mind among Big Mom's children whose father is identifiable? Please let me know in the comments if you have any interesting ideas. In fact, she referred to Jebeck like this. ろくでもない男. This expression is often used to criticize womanizing men. Linlin showed no signs of respecting Xebec, who was her own captain. This leads me to think that she might have betrayed Xebec, waiting for the right timing during the collapse of the Rox pirates, trying to get her hands on the Uowo no Mi and the road poneglyph. I speculate that Roger took advantage of this opportunity to obtain a copy of the poneglyph that Linlin had stolen. But now you might be wondering, why did God Valley, a mere non-member of the world government, possess a poneglyph or even an ancient weapon? Regarding the road poneglyphs, aside from the one Big Mom possesses, they basically seem to be located in countries likely connected to the Great Kingdom. So, let me explain why God Valley might have had a connection to the Great Kingdom. First, let's look at what Sengoku said. An island the world government wanted to hide has disappeared. The government always wants to hide inconvenient historical truths. Considering this, it's safe to assume that something related to the Great Kingdom existed in God Valley. Personally, I think a significant clue is the resources in God Valley mentioned in Chapter 1095. I believe these resources are gold or ores like uranium, which can be used as fuel for weapons. I have a clue about a place that might have been the model for God Valley. It's the Sado Kinzan gold mine in Japan. Just like God Valley, it has a deep valley in the center of a mountain. I know many of you probably thought of this place when God Valley was mentioned. Don't worry, I'll connect this point later. Especially in the 1800s in Japan, the government aimed for further production at the Sado mine to transition to a modern monetary system based on the gold standard. People competed to mine ores in search of a massive vein of gold, resulting in the mountain splitting in two. Shandora was once a prosperous golden city, but lost its functionality as a city due to battles against external enemies to protect the poneglyph. The poneglyph that the people of Shandia protected contained information about the ancient weapon Poseidon. Regarding Wano, the Kazuki family closed the country off to protect the road poneglyph and Pluton from external enemies. Wano was once recognized as a golden city in the world. Considering this, God Valley, where gold was likely mined, might have had a relationship with a massive kingdom. So, despite God Valley having abundant resources, the reason they didn't join the world government, like Wano Country or Shandora, is probably because there were resources, poneglyphs, or ancient weapons hidden beneath the valley that they didn't want the government to know about. Furthermore, in this video, I speculated that an ancient weapon existed in God Valley. If this theory is correct, the resources within the ores of God Valley might also include the power source for the ancient weapon. When the world government recovered this weapon, it probably had fuel loaded. However, the government might have miscalculated the weapon's power and ended up erasing God Valley, losing the ores that could be used as fuel at the same time. This might be why the weapon wasn't used until Vegapunk provided the Mother Flame. I actually received a question from a Patreon member that goes like this. What do you think about the relationship between God Valley and the Navajo Nation? Indians call it Tsebi Njiskai, which translated from the Navajo language literally means the Valley of Rocks. Interestingly, I agree with these opinions. Actually, Oda-sensei drew the manga Wanted, influenced by a certain movie. Yes, it's Young Guns. Young Guns is a 1988 American Western action film directed by Christopher Kane and written by John Fusco. The Navajo tribe also appears in this movie.
Bye. You got no loyalty, Navajo. Navajo.
And in this movie, the main character, Billy the Kid, has a scene where he appears from inside a treasure chest. In God Valley, there was also a person found inside a treasure chest. It was Shanks. Using this as a hint, I will predict Shanks' real name. The only hint is that Oda-sensei has used the names of real-life pirates for One Piece characters, and considering that he liked Western movies. Billy appeared from inside a treasure chest. Billy the Kid's alias is William Bonney. From here, a certain pirate comes to mind. It's William Kidd. So personally, I predict that Shanks' real name is Figureland William. I would be happy to hear your opinions as well. All right. As promised, I'd like to explain the plan regarding sending questions to Oda-sensei for the SBS segment. The participation method is simple. Just write the hashtag #DawnDusk and post your question. We'll adopt about the top 10 comments with the most likes and introduce them in another video. From there, I want us all to decide which question I will send to Shueisha. Getting our questions selected for the SBS corner might be tough, but there are some tips. First, avoid questions about key terms that are likely to be revealed in the future storyline, like what is One Piece or what is Figureland. It's preferred to ask exquisite questions that aren't fully explained in the main story. In addition, since Volume 107 includes up to Chapter 1088, it's better to ask questions related to the story from Chapter 1089 onwards. It might be a challenging attempt, but let's amp up this project aiming to get questions from our channel featured in the SBS.